Okay, this lesson is going to be focused on operations on polynomials. The good news is it's really going to combine, two of our prior concepts, which is multiplying polynomials and adding and subtracting polynomials or combining like terms. All right, so let's just go ahead and move on to an example here. All right, so we're just going to look at a problem and, like I said, combine what we already know. So when I look at this, we're going to follow our order of operations. So what we have to do first is take care of all the multiplication. So notice we have one set of multiplication to begin our problem. So I'm going to distribute the 3x squared to both terms in the second, or in our parenthesis here. So remember, when you distribute, it's coefficient to coefficient. So I would get 9 here, 3 times 3, and then base to base. So x squared times x would be x cubed. And then when I do my second distribution, I'm going to get negative 27x squared. Okay, now when I look at my next multiplication here, this is where we have the binomial times a binomial. All right, so if you remember your FOIL acronym, all right, which is just a shortcut for remembering all your distributions, all right, I'm going to do that now. So 3x times 2x would be a positive 6x squared. 3x times 11 would be a positive 33x. Negative 4 times 2x would be negative 8x. And then negative 4 times 11 would be negative 44. All right, so the only thing left for us to do now would be to combine our like terms. Now when we do that, I always look for the highest power of my base first. And in this case, we only have one x cubed term, so I can just bring it down. All right, we then have two x squared terms. So I have negative 27x squared plus 6x squared, so that would give us negative 21x squared. And then we have a positive 33x and a negative 8x. So if we combine those, that would be a negative 25x. And then to wrap up our problem, we only have the one constant term here on the end. So I just drop that down and I finish, all right, with negative 44. All right, so you can see that it's really just a combination of multiple skills that we have already talked about and discussed so far in this unit. Okay, so let's take another look, all right, at another example. All right. So once again, we want to take care of all the distribution and multiplying first. All right, so once again, I have another binomial times a binomial here, so I'm going to go ahead and do my distribution. So 4x cubed times 2x would be 8, and then 3x's times another x would be x to the 4th. 4x cubed times negative 8 would be negative 32x cubed. 2 times 2x is a positive 4x, and then 2 times negative 8 is a negative 16. Okay, so now I have a monomial times a trinomial. Now the big thing with this is when I distribute here, I want to take the sign with this 5x, so this is actually a negative 5x. So negative 5x times 8x to the 4th would be negative 40x to the 5th. Then a negative 5x times a positive 5x squared would be a negative 25x cubed. And then that negative 5x times a positive 8x would give us a negative 40x squared. Okay, so once we have done all of our distribution, now we want to gather and combine all of our like terms. So I'm looking for my highest power, which is this term, so negative 40x to the 5th. Then I'm going to take and look for my next highest power, which is the 4th degree term here, so I'm going to add 8x to the 4th here. All right, and then we want to look for all of our cubic terms. So here's a negative 32x cubed and a negative 25x cubed. So that's going to give us negative 57x cubed. All right, and just kind of moving down the line here. I only have one x squared term. So I'm going to drop that guy in right here. And then one x term. And then one constant term. So just drop those down. And so that is our final answer. All right, so moving on to our third example. Now, this is something that comes up a lot, and sometimes students make a mistake on this. So what I suggest is when you see this notation, when I see a binomial squared, go ahead and take the time to write it out. All right, so this really means 9x plus 3 times 9x plus 3. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and bring down the rest of the problem. Because what happens most of the time, if a student forgets to write it out this way, they end up losing some terms, all right, in their distribution. All right, they end up losing the two middle terms. All right, so now it looks just like what we've talked about. So I'm going to go ahead and start my distribution. 9x times 9x is 8x, or 81x squared. 9x times 3 is a positive 27x. 3 times 9x is another positive 27x, and then 3 times 3 is a positive 9. Now, in this second distribution here, I'm going to go ahead and put the negative here, and I'm going to open my parentheses so that when I do my distribution, I can then distribute this negative to all the terms to ensure that I have my signs correct. So 4x times 6x is 24x squared. 4x times negative 9 is negative 36x. 5 times 6x is a positive 30x, and then a 5 times negative 9 here is negative 45. All right, so now I'm just going to drop these first 4 terms down, and then I'm going to distribute this negative, all right, to each of the terms here. So that's going to become a negative 24x squared, that's going to become a positive 36x, that's going to become a negative 30x, and then that's going to become a positive 45. All right, so once again, now it's just a matter of combining all these like terms. All right, so we've got 2 quadratic terms here, or squared terms. So 81 minus 24, that's going to be 6157 x squared. We have a lot of x terms. So we've got 27x plus 27x, which is 54x. And then I'm going to add another 36x, so 54 plus 36 would be 90x. And then I'm going to subtract 30x here, so that's going to end up being a positive 60x. Hope my math is correct there. A lot of mental math going on. All right, so, and then we have 2 constant terms, a positive 9 and a positive 45. So if we add those 2 guys together, that gives us a positive 54. All right, so our final answer. All right, I'm going to do one more problem with you before I give you some examples to practice on your own. All right, and this is when we have a string of 3 things multiplied versus 2. I want to make sure that we feel comfortable doing this problem. All right, so the first thing you want to do is really just do your FOIL, all right, with the first 2 binomials here. And we're just going to drop this guy down at the end here, and then we'll do that in just a second. So I'm going to do 2x times negative 3x, and I'm going to go ahead and put all this in parentheses because we know we're going to have to distribute one more time with the 7x plus 9. So negative 6x squared. Then 2x times negative 5 is negative 10x. 1 times negative 3 is negative 3x, and then 1 times negative 5 is negative 5. And then once again, I'm going to close parentheses and then drop down that third binomial. Now, before I distribute again, I want to go ahead and clean up the problem and combine any like terms. So in this case, I can combine our 2 linear terms here and get negative 13x minus 5, and then I have 7x plus 9 here on the end. And now this looks like a problem that we have done before. All right, so now we just need to distribute, okay? So when I do this, all right, you can go front to back or back to front depending on what you want to do. All right, so 6x squared times 7x is negative 42x cubed. Negative 6x squared times 9 is going to be a negative 54x squared. All right, I'm just going to scroll down a little bit here. Now, when I do my next set of distribution, I'm going to start lining up my like terms. All right, we mentioned this in a prior lesson to just help me see all my like terms and to make it a little bit quicker to combine those. So now negative 13x times 7 is going to be, or 7x I should say, is going to give us an x squared term. So I'm going to line it up right here. So that's going to be negative 91x squared. And then negative 13x times 9 is going to be an x term. All right, I don't have that, so I'm going to start a new column here. That's going to be negative, and 10 times 9 is 90, plus another 27, so that's going to be negative 107x. And then I'm now going to do my final distribution. So negative 5 times 7x is negative 35x. I'm going to put that with this guy. And then negative 5 times 9 is negative 45. So I'm going to put that in its own column here. So now when we look at this, all my like terms are arranged in columns nice and neat for me. So 1x cubed term, just bring that down. So now I'm going to get negative 145x squared, then negative 142x, and then minus 45. All right, so that's our final answer. Okay, so now I'm going to give you a few problems to work on your own. So here's the first. So what I'd like you to do is go ahead and pause the video, all right, and work this problem out and then check your answer. Okay, let's see how you did. So here's the answer that you should have come up with: 30x to the 4th minus 41x to the 3rd plus 56x squared plus 42x plus 9. All right, so let's look at another example. So once again, all right, go ahead and pause the video at this time, work this problem, and then check your answer. Okay, so the answer you should have come up with would be negative 42x to the 6th plus 80x to the 5th minus 6x to the 4th minus 36x. And then one last example. All right, so this would be another one of the ones where you have, all right, 3 binomials multiplied. All right, so go ahead and pause the video and attempt this on your own. Okay, so the answer should be 240x cubed plus 272x squared minus 780x minus 252. Okay, well that wraps up our lesson, all right, with operations on polynomials. So please bring your notes to class, any questions that you may have over this material, and then we'll move on to the homework.